So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's Transformation Thursday. And this is a super timely topic because next week is Thursday. So, we are speaking about stress eating, emotional eating, and junk food with Miss Kwasa Khepera, also known as Body Culinary. So, please, I know we are looking to see how we can make best changes for this upcoming season. So, yes, please. Um, we look forward for your guidance on how we can navigate this upcoming season. So feel free to take it away.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I'm just so blown away at recognizing this sister from back in the day because a lot of folks are like, oh, I know you from back in the day. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. And you've always been such a lovely spirit, such a consistent spirit, someone's face who I've seen over the years in certain places and spaces at the African Street Festival or anything that's happening in terms of community before it was really trendy, before all of the social media. So, oh my gosh, such a pleasure, right? So I'm glad I'm jumping on. Greetings to everybody, send you warm positive vibrations from Central America. Um, yeah, we're out here. We're doing all kinds of things and we're being consistent. Some of us are being really consistent with the path that is our calling. So I am going to be connecting with you all today about stress eating, junk food addiction, junk food, substances. I have my own little language. Substances masquerading as food, masquerading as nutrition, aka junk food, and also emotional eating. And that is a background I'm very familiar with because I come from a family pattern, a family history of morbid obesity. When I was coming up, I didn't know what the word obesity was, right? Grandma wasn't fat, grandma was just grandma, right? But I come from a family pattern of morbid obesity, diabetes, heart disease, right? All of those comorbidities or the diseases that hang around in packs together that are best friends, right? And I am Kwasa, also known as Kwasa Peaceful Eating. I am a professionally trained chef, although I will credit my grandma Lou and the women in my family for really giving me my hand with seasoning. Graduated from the Institute of Culinary Education many years ago. I'm also a personal trainer and have been in the fitness industry for over 3 decades. Somebody said it's going on 4 decades. So I guess that's dating me, but that's okay. I'm a natural born woman. I love being a woman. Shout out to you, whatever your expression is. I'm a natural born woman and I love being a woman. I'm also a mother. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I am someone that is very, very passionate about food and I like to eat. I come from a family history and a family cultural background of Bayesian, right, or Barbados, Caribbean background, and also Southern and African American. So I like to say I came up on 2 different flavors of pig feet. So I'm not the food police, I'm not the hair police. I'm a big eater, and I'm very proud and cherish my cultural background. Though I'm big on making distinctions, and I really honor the fact that those that came before us, they did what they could so that we can get to this place, especially when it comes to food. A lot of people crawled, they ate and they fed us whatever scraps that was available to them. That is a principle. And I hold dear to a lot of those principles, right? And they actually really ground me. So I feel like those folks that came before me, they passed me a baton. My grandma Lou, she gave me a baton. My grandma Lou, let me say, first of all, she was not vegan and she was not vegetarian, though she is my inspiration for consuming the way that I do. And the way that I'm consuming, it's bigger than a label. The label's a distinction for what we would like to be served, right? Though I don't desire that our food should divide us, right? We don't need one more thing to divide us. We don't need that. That's whack. Like crack is whack. We don't need anything else to divide us. And whatever cultural or ethnic background you're coming from, all of us can benefit from more whole. This is the distinction I like to make: whole, fresh, living and unprocessed foods. And I find making distinctions make the difference. Making those kinds of distinctions they can really serve to shorten our learning curve, right? When it comes to making changes, upgrading our consumption patterns in a way that is sustainable and enjoyable, right? Because we are experiencing the effects of our patterns of eating, right? In this past panoramic, uh, our eating patterns, our consumption patterns have told on us, right? We lost a lot of people who had underlying conditions. So we were already getting wake-up calls. That was an extreme wake-up call. Like the sense of urgency was like, it wiped a lot of people out. So if you were not already on fire about upgrading your consumption patterns, then it will behoove you to see how you can make changes wherever you are on your journey. I invite you to consider that there is a sense of urgency about getting ourselves in alignment with our consumption patterns in a way that's going to demonstrate some specific results. And today, it doesn't have to take you like it took me 30 something years, almost 40 years to get really, really clear and grounded. It's really about the results. All right. So I'm in the second portion of my life. And I'm extremely intentional about enjoying my time in my human suit. I really feel passionately that we deserve to feel comfortable in our own hair and skin. Now, I was a junk food junkie. I had a face full of acne. I'm not anti-makeup, though as someone that has had a face full of acne and hyperpigmentation and spent a lot of money on proactive, salicylic acid, hyaluronic acid, benzoyl peroxide, you name it. I really cherish being able to wear my own skin. As someone that had my ears singed off with the hot comb, had extreme scalp burns from perms, lost a lot of hair, had my hair braided so tight I had blisters and damaged my scalp. I'm intentional about enjoying my own human suit. And I'm intentional about being able to do that when my hair is white. That is intentional. So there's no way I can enjoy my own skin, right, without makeup if it is not healthy. And I tried everything. I spent money on everything unnatural and natural. And I can say, even though the doctor said differently, you know, what your skin looks like has nothing to do with your food. Based on experience, my food was directly connected, as well as my lifestyle patterns, directly connected to my skin. And a lot of us were thinking very aesthetically. We love the muscle, as someone that has competed in fitness. We love the muscle. We love clear skin, though it appears that we're only thinking about the flavor in our mouth and what the muscles look like in our loins. And we're not really thinking deeply about the condition of our organs, right? How can we have vibrant organs or secrete the hormones that allow us to grow muscle without healthy organs? So my liver was saying a lot about all of the things that I had been eating. I was a junk food junkie. I was a severe potato chip addict. And I would likely be several hundred pounds if I did not change the way that I eat. So I am a personal trainer. I have competed in fitness on stage, all natural with no chemicals. I'm pre-postnatal certified, kettlebell certified, yoga certified. I've got all types of certifications, though also in this day and time, graduate from culinary school, you can have a lot of certifications. And in this age of body positivity, which is great, I think perhaps, especially as folks of Afro descent and Afro ascent, as a collective, I think it would benefit us to be really, really aware and conscientious of how body positivity is being marketed to us, right? As folks that were ridiculed historically for our hair, we had to cover up our nappy hair, right? I don't use any products in my hair. We had to cover our hair up at one time because it was considered unsightly. Even within our comedy and our entertainment, we're constantly the butt of everybody's jokes, right? So we're very sensitive about our bodies and our derrieres, which it wasn't a problem for us to have large derrieres before. So I think it's absolutely astounding that we're altering ourselves, putting so much faux body parts in. But in any event, we are being lulled into complacency when we're actually in a state of crisis when it comes to our numbers, right? Numbers are objective. They're not just feelings, right? In America right now, the average American, it said that over 70% of the population is unhealthfully overweight, right? And I want to make the distinction with weight. We're not just talking about muscle and skin and bone. We're talking about adipose tissue, which is a technical term for fatty tissue. We have subcutaneous fat right underneath the skin, and then there is visceral fat. Visceral fat, if you ever ate, chuck meat or chopped meat, we used to call it, that had all that, the ground beef, and you see all that marbleization of the fat in there. Well, we've got lots of unhealthy fat, and it is actually wrapping around our organs. That is extremely dangerous. So I think it's interesting as someone that is trained and had clients from all walks of life, all different cultures, different racial backgrounds. I find when we come into our community, the conversation and the education is somewhat remedial. We're very behind, and there's not a sense of urgency. So I want to make the distinction between, I love my curves, right? Even as someone that eats what would be considered raw, vegan, whole, fresh, living, unprocessed foods for 14 years plus, was eating what I consider very, very healthfully before then. I still have curves. I didn't become emaciated, right? And I eat quite a bit. So I don't think there's anything wrong with us being curvy, though holding excess visceral fat and holding excess visceral fat in particular eras is a precursor, a red flag for the comorbidities, diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure. And I've experienced within my own family, I've had young family members gone, right? Because the progression of carrying so much excess weight was cancer, straight up and down, cancer. My grandma on my maternal side, I used to have to go to the refrigerator and she'd send me to go and fetch her insulin. And I was very scared of needles. So my grandmother would get her alcohol and wipe her thigh down. I'd watch her give herself needles, and then I'd have to go put the vial of insulin back in the refrigerator. So I wondered as a young girl, is that what's going to happen to me, right? As I looked at pictures of my mom, young and fine, with a little poodle skirt and the saddle shoes on. I don't know if this generation knows what the poodle skirt is. Look up Happy Days. But anyway, I was looking at my aunties and their little beehives, which I love their old hairstyles, right? Looked like an Afro puff on the top. I looked at their pictures in high school and I wondered, how did they go from this slim and fine to so large, right? I just very innocently, I was wondering with the wide eyes of a child, is that going to be my trajectory? Is that going to happen to me? So I was keeping my eyes peeled to see what the patterns are. So I'm very much an observer of patterns, and I think that is a shortcut. So I started to make connections as I matured between stress and our self-soothing, soothing ourselves with food, right? Soothing ourselves with food. I also witnessed a lot of substance abuse within my own family, narcotics from weed, not knocking anybody, you smoke whatever you smoke, but I can tell you somebody has said to me that works in the industry, the concentrations of weed now is almost like taking in cocaine. So it's not the same. And again, masses of the population are being encouraged to self-soothe and to self-medicate with these substances chemically, right? So we're not being encouraged to go to the root and to resolve a lot of trauma, CPTSD, PTSD, trauma, right? So without that resolve, we're putting chemical band-aids on things, and you will need greater and greater, more intense hits of these chemicals because they actually weaken the organs, our cognitive function, the brain, etc. So anyway, as a young woman, I'm just piecing together, someone that was raised very religiously in the Pentecostal church, and we had a gigantic picture of the Last Supper. I'm like, we spent so much time in church, 8 o'clock service, Sunday school, 9 o'clock service, 12 o'clock service, sometime afternoon service, bringing plates of potato salad or trays of potato salad and chicken. We're at the church all the time, several days per week. it doesn't seem that the feeling good in the church and the music and the coming together, it didn't seem, I started to notice it didn't seem to be enough to stop people from uh, abusing narcotics or soothing themselves with our narcotics. I'm like, there must be something that they're soothing themselves from. So I'm like, there's something intangible that's going on there. There's something intangible that I can't see, but something that's going on with mental pain, emotional pain. There's somehow the religion has not been enough to fix that. It hasn't been enough because I'm looking at the results. And at some point as a young woman, I'm like, it's not working for you grown folks. So I figure I'm on my own. I need to find out what the connection is and what I can do for myself. I also thought that my grandma, that was diabetic, had she stayed alive any longer, it's likely they would have amputated her feet, right? She became so heavy that she had to take her stomach and rest it on her arm. So she was morbidly obese. That was a new thing to even mention, morbidly obese. She was very into the church, Tammy Faye, Jim Baker, 700 Club, Reverend Ike, and get the prayer cloths online. Somehow, though, it didn't seem to be producing the results that the people on the 700 Club online had, or not online, on TV, the television evangelism. So I will say, my grandmother who was obese, her grandmother, I knew both my great grandmothers, she was very into herbs, and she had herbal books and concoctions in big jars sitting on the shelf. She had beautiful skin, well into her 90s. She seemed pretty cooled out. And years later, my mom passed me her copy of Back to Eden, which was one of the old school first health books that was popular by this man named Jeff Claus. And I still have my great grandmother's hardback copy of Back to Eden, which had all different types of herbal concoctions. And my mom said, I'm giving it to you because you seem like your grandmother. So in any event, once I got my first job and I could buy my own snacks and treats, I discovered I got a job in the village, and I discovered a health food store because people on their lunch break would get falafels. That was a whole new world to me, a falafel. That was one of the first popular health foods. Then there were knishes, these potato patties. This was a health food back in the days. And then I got put on to, let's say it was a place called Dojo's in the village, a popular place that sold all kinds of food, vegetarian food. Let's see, what are the other hot spots? The Rastas had some of the best. There was something called the Ital Shack, where they would make chicken, and they would make vegetarian TVP, texturized vegetable protein, and it would taste even better than the meat, right? The curry chicken and curry goat and stew chicken. The Rastas had it down. It had food that was so, so delicious. At all the African street festivals around New York, you can usually find Rastas with some kind of vegetarian food. There used to be a woman, her name was Nyota. She had a big catering spread at the African Street Festival, which used to be the East Carnival at Boys and Girls High School. So myself and my peers, that was the hangout spot where you went to get your little cowrie shell earrings, your bracelets. And that was the vegetarian food back then, right? Veggie patties also with a lot of cooked cabbage and carrots. And usually those patties, it was an alternative to the beef patty. They were sandwiched between a big layer of cocoa bread, or like hard dough bread. So we had left out the meat, but it was actually quite a bit of starch. It was a lot of starch, and it wasn't uncommon then, and it's not uncommon now to see quite a bit of people who were overweight, but they were vegetarians, right? So I got set on my journey, and I was reading these books. One of my first books, I think, was Keith Wright. I bought it off the book tables, the black book tables back in the day. It was a book about sugar. Then I purchased Elijah Muhammad's How to Eat to Live, right? Because I told myself I would always take a portion of my check working on Wall Street and buy books. So I got How to Eat to Live. And then I got Dr. Yalo Africa's African Holistic Health. These are some of the first books that I really treasured, my books that I purchased. Then another one of my first health books was also Heal Thyself by Queen Afua, who eventually became one of my mentors. So I was always on a journey trying to figure out and trying to like see if I can just nip it in the bud, me following that trajectory of insulin and morbid obesity. And I thought my grandmother was very angry, but looking back on it, she probably didn't feel good. So it makes sense when you don't feel good, you're not going to be in a good mood. Now, this is my maternal side. My Bayesian grandmother, she wasn't vegetarian, but she was very much into bush tea. And a lot of her principles I carried, simple principles like eat your own food. And anywhere we went on little church bus rides, my grandma Lou, I talk about all the time, my Bayesian grandmother, she would take those old bread bags and she would have a fried fish in there or whatever it is, her coconut bread or some Ovaltine or whatever. But there's nowhere that we would go where grandma didn't make her own food. And when I came over to her house, as soon as I walk in the door, say goodnight, how you keeping? Wash my hands, sit down. Grandma Lou usually had these plastic lunch trays where she was chopping up like her own version of jerk seasoning. So chopping up scallions and pimento and hot peppers and putting it in jars. Or she was grating coconut and she would let me help grate the coconut for coconut sweet bread. So delicious. That's one of my fondest memories. Or she was rolling pennies to put pennies inside a savings account. Or she showed me how to pick the rocks out of the peas. So she would make her peas. So that principle of making your own food, she was very orderly in her kitchen. She always had sweet smells coming out of her kitchen. Anyone that came into the door got maubey or sorrel. I call them Caribbean Kool-Aids because eventually you put so much either condensed milk or sugar in them that we lose a lot of the medicinal properties of a lot of these herbal drinks. But anybody that came through her door was always welcome and always got a plate of food. So again, these are principles I noticed with my grandmother. She fed everybody, and I would say she fed people with a lot of love. And so I've heard the story of Jesus feeding people with a couple of loaves of bread and some fish. And I'm like, well, my grandma did that all the time. She wasn't necessarily rich, but there was never a thought that we don't have enough food to share with other people. So these are things that actually really made an impact on me. So I usually have food in my bag and I'm usually always sharing food with people. And I found that I never have an issue with children or people eating fruits and vegetables at my house, right? So again, I just want to drive home the principles of preparing food, making fresh food, eating my own food, eating food that's very, very flavorful. All of this is what I picked up from my grandma Lou. And then I knew both of my great grandmothers, my great grandma Jean on my dad's side and my great grandma Mackie. I watched both of them. All of these ladies were big on their bush tea. All of them lived into their 90s. And I heard people, family members say, oh, they died because they wouldn't go to the doctor. But I'm like, yeah, but the other folks are dying in their 60s. And they're going to the doctor and taking insulin. But I'm looking at 3 women that all were very comfortable in their skin. I watched them all wear their own hair. I never saw them wear makeup. They seemed very confident. They seemed, I don't know, just had such a sense of self. And they were pillars of the family and they were eating their own food. So these women, when I compare and contrast to the women, the next generations of women coming up, they weren't so sick. They knew how to deal with measles, mumps, chicken pox, any kind of thing that could come up. You would go to your grandmother, your great grandmother, and these women also lived in the house. I remember them living in the house. When it came to treats around the holidays is when we got some more apples or oranges. I remember getting washouts from these women. So they let us eat a bunch of candy. And then we would get a cup of castor oil with some baking soda and some other stuff in it. And then we would have to chase it with an orange, right? So I remember all the grandchildren having to line up and we got a cup of this washout around springtime. So I was still able to witness these maternal figures imparting wisdom, right? And rituals and habits. When these matriarchs passed away, a lot of those traditions left with them. Nobody else picked that stuff up. Actually, when those matriarchs left, we didn't have as many family gatherings at the park on the holidays. And I also noticed more processed food coming in. Before my grandmother with the diabetes, before she passed, her doctor recommended that she drink diet soda. And I only watched her get bigger and bigger. So again, I'm watching all of these patterns. Now, I like to eat. Just like the Caribbean and Southern side, I like to eat. But I also recognize I don't want to be an unhealthy chef. I don't want to die from the food that I'm eating, right? And the same triggers to self-soothe with food. I picked up a lot of those triggers, right? Um, when you get to a certain age and there's a lot of stress and a lot of volatile happenings going on and people arguing, we have picked up the habits of soothing ourselves. So whether we realize it or not, when it's time for you to do something to make yourself feel better, or what's the messaging that we've been shown, right? We watch the adults either go for weed, coke, heroin. I'm just gonna keep it real. Alcohol. I actually tell my clients, so I study junkies. I studied junkies for many years, and I study junkies literally because I always wanted to understand, like, why would somebody stick needles in their hands? Why would somebody beat their wives? Like, I really wanted to understand, and I'm very fascinated by our tendency to self-sabotage, right? Do things that would take us out or take our family members out. And I'm equally fascinated by self-actualization. Those people that don't seem to be so fixated on food or don't seem to have blockages when it comes to pursuing dreams or business or athleticism. I'm like, what is the difference in their thinking? They must be thinking something different. So again, I'm observing different patterns, right? So I could discern after a while what patterns I need to hold on to, right? Those parts of my culture, Bayesian and Caribbean and African American, but clearly some things that were not producing the results. So I'm like, there's certain things I don't want the same results. Like, I don't want to have a whole bunch of children by a whole bunch of different random folks, right? I could observe what I want to take and hold on to and what I want to leave behind. And I could start to see, like, I need to go out and do some investigation to figure out, why do we behave the way that we behave? You know, very simply. And I definitely see our consumption patterns as a big contributor to a lot of our self-sabotage, to be quite honest. And there are patterns that have been ingrained culturally, that are ingrained physically, that are ingrained chemically. I can distinguish that a lot of these patterns, we don't challenge them because we want to hold on to our culture. We're very proud. We want to hold on to something. We got to have something left to hold on to. So we hold on to what's familiar, right? Like when it comes to beating children, right? Or making jokes about each other, right? And laughing. And a lot of our entertainment has desensitized us to our pain, right? So a lot of that desensitization has lulled us into complacency. So, you know, it's much more common for us to laugh at obesity and to laugh, especially in the times that we're in now, laugh at addiction. I see channels now online and Instagram where people putting the camera on people at their most broken state, whether they're broken and strung out on drugs or if they're selling their bodies, and people are putting a camera on it as if it's entertainment. So it's speaking a lot to our consciousness, right? Many of us, when we want to make changes, again, I'm gonna keep it real. Many women, many of us never would have come to even consider eating more fresh fruits and vegetables if it wasn't for us trying to get longer hair, natural hair, to experience our natural hair long. And now on YouTube, you can see so many Black women and Afro women, African American, Caribbean women that are experiencing our own kinky, cottony hair, long textures. So, you know, vanity has been a gateway for many of us to start to make changes, more so than health. The hair, having longer hair, or I can say definitely for me, so much acne scarring, as someone that was eating very healthfully, that was juicing, making pies and making a lot of vegan stuff. I was a chunky wonky vegetarian at one point. I have some old pictures of me even at Hill myself. My face was blown up from salt and a lot of the original TVPs. And I remember there was vegetarian meats inside of a can. The brand was called Loma Linda. Had all these sausages and patties inside of a can. That's old school vegetarian stuff. We also used to eat stripples. We had everything that you can eat, your regular soul food, there was a vegan version of it. So there was the fake bacon, was the stripples. Oh my gosh, all the fake meats and stuff. I used to get down on all that stuff, and I can make some mean tofu scramble. But the
I
more I
love fry
started,
pats. Fry
oh,
pats.
down the fried fat, honey. You had to get the ketchup. You had to get the buns. There was a vegan vegetarian version of Captain Crunch, which was Gorilla Munch. If you was a member of the Park Slope Food Co-op, shout out to the Park Slope Food Co-op. When I had a son, I had my son at home, and I was determined that my son would not have diabetes. I swore to myself, if I have 2 nickels, I came up with a free lunch program. So I'm like, if I have 2 nickels, I will be feeding my child healthy food. Like I just got really clear about that as a young mother. So I found ways, I found the Parks of Food Court. Somebody recommended, and I got on the train, went from one borough to the next borough with my little shopping cart and my little net bags to get healthy food. So I would buy for his class, or if he's at daycare, fruit juice, sweetened lollipops. Because to me, that was like an upgrade, right? I would get the burritos brand, like popcorn with less hydrogenated fat. I got the vegetarian Cheetos and cheese doodles, which I was addicted to. I was addicted to all of that stuff. So I got the healthier versions of that without all the hydrogenated fat and better ingredients. I got the vegan Oreos. Remember Oreo double stuff? Well, I found the vegan version of it. And looking back, I was wondering why my face was looking like gravel, like the sidewalk. I was eating a bunch of health junk food, healthy junk. It was delicious. It was crunchy. It was frosting. I used to eat all of the ice cream sandwiches. I would sit outside the food co-op with my best friend, and we would just be eating ice cream sandwiches and chase that with the vegetarian Cheetos and then the ginger sodas. So a lot of us are eating more processed foods, fun foods, and recreational foods than we're eating the fruits and vegetables. I would even say many of us don't have a palate for a lot of fresh food. And the times that we're in, quite often, I'm very concerned that in times of emergency, being that we don't have a lot of those elder mothers there, we don't recognize in our environments, whether you're in the Caribbean or if you're in the States, there's a lot of local foods that we don't recognize. Not only do we not recognize them, if we had to eat them, many of us don't have a palate for fresh greens. We don't have the palate. There are a lot of things I eat now that I used to hate. The first time I tasted brown rice, I spit it out. I thought it was disgusting. I don't even eat rice anymore, not even brown rice. It fell away over the years. I didn't have a taste for avocado. I hated seaweed, spirulina. There's so much stuff that my palate has changed. So I'd love to encourage people to consider and to know your taste buds can change. And I was really, really addicted to not only the taste and the flavor of all those concentrated appetite stimulators. And I think there is a distinction between appetite, right, and the craving for all these flavors and true hunger. Because if you're really hungry, you eat some celery sticks, right? But a lot of time our appetite is being stimulated. Also, our insulin is being stimulated, right? So even when I was eating a lot of brown rice, I could eat a whole little cute Cuisinart pot full of brown rice. And I was like, okay, this is healthy, but shouldn't I be full? I feel like I can keep going and going and going. So I'm an avid researcher for 30 something years. And I came to terms with there's a reason why I still feel hungry. And over time, I figured out it's my insulin, it's chemical, right? That my blood sugar is off. So many of us may not want to contend with these things, right? The fact that there's an issue. If you are vegetarian and you're vegan and you have a lot of acne, it doesn't make us bad people, but it is telling us something. The body's communicating with us about the state of the organs, the health of the organs, that the liver is being challenged, right? My liver was freaking out from all of those years of eating, I mean, a lot of junk food, a lot of potato chips, Utz, barbecue, Bonton, Wise, Kettle, organic. I ate a lot of chips. Started out with the 25-cent bags, 4 25-cent bags, 8 25-cent bags, then getting the 49-cent bags, then the $1.49 bags. And I was like, why am I still hungry? Light bulb, ding, 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 ding. One day I figured, I was like, what would happen if this made potato? Let me get a potato and let me steam a baked potato and put some Lowry. I remember Lowry seasoned salt on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel full. And it was less money than I paid for all of these potato chips. It started to occur to me over time, and this was a paradigm shift me. Oh my gosh, this is not food. It's crispy, it's fried, it's delicious, it's flavor in my mouth, but it's not food. That's why I'm still hungry. I also started to make distinctions with the water, right? Most of our body is what? Water. We hear it all the time. And a lot of times we're just repeating things. Though I would dare say, I would observe that a lot of what we're repeating is very rote and it's very superficial. It doesn't appear that we're very self-reflective. We're moving so fast in society. We're not really thinking deeply. We're not really thinking. We're reacting. We're in survival mode. We're trying to hurry and get to the job or the two jobs. Or if you're a single mom and you're dancing, you got one or two full-time jobs, you're taking care of children, and you're in school. We're not even present. We're like, go, 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 go. So we're not really thinking deeply. We're not present. Nobody's home. We're disassociated. We're not really present in our bodies. And I would say a lot of us have experienced some type of trauma, whether that is one incident, one traumatic event, or in the case of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which for a long time wasn't even acknowledged in chocolate folks, wasn't even acknowledged, right? It was acknowledged at some point in veterans, military veterans, but it was never acknowledged. Maybe perhaps Joyce DeGruy was maybe one of the first people that really started to coin the term post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic slave disorder, to acknowledge our trauma, right? So a lot of the different things that we've experienced emotionally, it hasn't been acknowledged and it hasn't been processed. So what do we do with all of that stuff? It's packed down into your subconscious and it is constantly being triggered. A lot of us are even triggering each other a lot without even recognizing it, right? A lot of our communication skills, a lot of the noise, a lot of our inability to be able to listen. We're triggered a lot of the noise in the environment, the fussing and fighting, a lot of our fears for survival, right? A lot of our parents, if they're successful, there are whole generations, I remember, of latchkey kids. So there's been a trade-off of, okay, we're able to make more money, but then there's less time spent with the children. So there's a lot of trauma when we can't, we don't have the time or the resources to protect our children. The numbers of not only women and girls, but now we see that a lot of our boys that have been tampered with is a lot of trauma. And the previous generations, all they had to make themselves feel better was religion. Though there's a distinction between processing trauma, understanding our psyche, understanding how that packed down trauma will express itself, understanding how a lot of the things that we're watching are triggering us, understanding how the brain, if it's deprived of nutrition, is compromised when it comes to making decisions, sharp decision making. So it makes sense. It makes sense that in such an environment of triggeration, an environment that feels unsafe, that we'd want to self-medicate. It makes sense. So I don't think it's something that, I think it's ineffective for us to beat up on ourselves, right? Because that's going to make you feel bad, and that's going to, again, trigger you once again to self-medicate. I think perhaps many even of the churches and so-called leaders don't admit that they perhaps are in the same place as the congregation when it comes to self-medicating, right? It's not uncommon to see preachers and leaders of congregations looking like they have two babies in their stomach, right? Yet I came up with knowing that there's always a 40-day consecration fast going on. And again, as a young person, I'm thinking, how could you be fasting all the time, but everybody's getting bigger and bigger, but you don't say these things to the adults because you're called fasting, you might get popped in the mouth. right?
Mhm.
So I could see these different patterns, but I've always been curious about the why, the why. And I think perhaps if we can get to the root, we'll have a better chance. We will have more access to actually making effective, efficient changes. We can be more strategic about the things that we need to do and not keep spinning our wheels, because the food is huge, but it's more than just the food in terms of what we need to process trauma. So we're not just superficially making ourselves feel better chemically with potato chips and concentrated sugars, processed foods that are devitalized of nutrients, right? That don't have their original fiber and water in it. So it hits our bloodstream very, very quickly. All that glucose is spilled out in the blood. Some of it is stored in the muscle and the liver, those small storage tanks within the body. Any excess that is not used is then stored as adipose tissue and visceral fat, which is very, very dangerous. So even when we're going to the doctor, our parents are going to the doctor and getting numbers, right? A lot of us don't know what to do with that information. And when I go into other communities, the conversations are totally different. There's a lot more conversation about what's cutting edge in terms of human performance, and how can we live longer, and how can we make sure that our offspring is positioned to be high performing physically, emotionally, mentally. And these are not conversations that are being had, I find, as a collective in the Afro communities. So basically, we're traumatized, stressed out, in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're going to reach for the best of what's available to you. When you're totally tired, sleepy, sleep deprived, when you're emotionally spent, constantly putting out fires all day, you're going to self-medicate on automatic pilot. And you can have the best of intentions. You're intending to fast. I worked at a holistic health center. I'm trained in nutritional fasting. But if I really have to look at it, people I've seen over the years, the majority of it, similar to me being in a personal training field for many years, the majority of people, it doesn't stick as a lifestyle. It doesn't stick. Or with vegan and vegetarian, but we're unhealthily overweight. We're carrying around too much excess weight. Many of us will pick either the food or the movement. We're very resistant, even though we have natural innate abilities, we're very resistant to exercise, right? We do it begrudgingly, or we do it like with the hair, just for vanity, and not really paying attention to our organs and our vitality until we're being wheeled into an operating room on a gurney, then trying to, and desperately make deals with our God. And it doesn't work like that. So
So
I'm not saying a lot. I'm saying a lot. I hope this is a helpful conversation, Abena, so you can step in whenever if you need to.
yes, what are the remedies to stress eating? How can we recognize it? And what do we do when we feel it coming on, the desire to eat when we're stressed?
Well, I would say that is something to be cultivated, right? That is awareness. There are three lifestyle practices. I would say they're leverage lifestyle practices. And I said that they're leveraged because they're an investment, right? And if we're investing our time, our energy, our money, we should be getting back more for something we're investing in. So that should be, hopefully we're making good, beneficial investments. So leverage lifestyle activities, they can really level the playing field, especially when it comes to if you're a mom or a single parent, or even if you're in a relationship, you've got a lot going on. We're constantly trying to catch up. And most of us are not about to quit our jobs tomorrow. We have children, we have responsibilities. So the three leverage lifestyle practices that we have access to, that I think we grossly underestimate. One, what I call it, rather than getting on vegan, raw vegan, keto, carnivore, whatever label you want to call yourself, your BI, bubble eye business. We're more concerned about the result. Leverage lifestyle practices are number one, peaceful consumption. And by peaceful consumption, what I mean is food that demonstrates that it loves you back, right? So that's the litmus test I have. If I'm getting a whole bunch of acne, that food is not loving me back, right? If I was in an abusive relationship and the person is, oh, it's fine as heck, all get out, but I'm coming up with black eyes, you're like, they fine, but this is going to take you out. If the food is not demonstrating that it loves me back, then it's got to go. And I've had funerals for many of food. I had a funeral for the potato chips. I was like, "Ooh, I love you, but you got to go because this is not good. I don't feel good with all this acne. Plus, I know my liver is taxed, right? So peaceful consumption, food that is peaceful to your arteries, peaceful to your colon, peaceful to your brain, right? If you're under so much stress, when a lot of stress, when you're experiencing stress, you're secreting B vitamins. So I need B vitamins in my food, right? So that means we're going to likely have to invest in a bit of education. So we're not just only going with the macronutrients, proteins, carbs, fats, but if we were to run and to analyze our food, you see a lot of the highly processed foods are very devitalized. We've destroyed a lot of the nutrition, or the companies have destroyed a lot of the living nutrition, the living water, the enzymes, the life force, the energy that's in the food. So peaceful food is going to have a specific result in your body. You'll start dumping waste. You'll see a change in your skin, your body odor. So food that demonstrates that it loves you back. Number two, a daily personal movement practice. There are a million things I can say about it. Most people say exercise. I say a daily personal movement practice. It's not just about looking cute. That's nice. Your form, what you look like, is going to follow your function, right? So we don't have to be so concerned about weight loss, right? Because there's usually a fear of weight loss. We want to lose weight. Really fat, I would say fat loss, right? Or adipose tissue loss, right? We don't want to lose muscle, right? So a daily personal movement practice is going to give you a shot of the drugs that people are looking for externally that is taxing the brain, aging the body, aging your organs. You can get a hit of a lot of those drugs from your own body, your own dopamine from a movement practice. That's something I figured out years ago. I was telling people for years ago, I bought extra equipment to invite all my friends to work out. Nobody ever came. But I figured out that a movement practice was something, especially as a young mother, I couldn't keep trucking my new baby up to Harlem for my dance classes. So eventually I realized I need to do something on my own at home. So I bought the old school Buns of Steel workout tapes, and I had a little rickety raggedy, a cheap step up box from, I don't know if it was Target or Walmart or one of those stores. And I started, just doing something in the house because it made me feel good. I wasn't thinking about fitness so much. I figured out it made me feel good. It was therapeutic. I didn't know about all the chemicals that were the positive chemicals response that I was having in my body. I did research though many years ago, and I read that exercise is just as effective as psychotherapy, right? And I was like, okay, I see all the dysfunction that's going on around me. I need that. And this is something I could do for myself. So a daily personal movement practice will be something that you can do as long as you have enough space in your house for exercise mat. You have enough space to administer some deep therapy to yourself, right? So cardio for your heart, right? Strength for your bones, right? Also a strong mind, right? The cardiovascular is for your heart is endurance, right? Your body's ability to deal with your breath while you're under pressure, to do muscular endurance, repetitive movement over and over. That builds up mental resiliency, right? The strength cultivates mental toughness, right? So you also have flexibility. A stiff body is going to be a stiff mind. It's inflexible. So a lot of the different types of movement practices carry right over to your mental state, right? So it's a therapy that you can administer to yourself. And then it's just a benefit that you look and you feel better, right? When your arteries are clogged, you're not going to be feeling good. When your colon is clogged, you're not going to be feeling good. When your liver is clogged, you're not going to be feeling good. But when we're so stressed, we keep reaching on automatic pilot for more commercials of candy bars, more chips. Now there's DoorDash, and you could be on the train platform ordering your snacks and your burgers and stuff to be delivered right to your door. And the results are speaking for themselves. Many of us don't think that eating healthy is delicious, right? So that's going to require that we get some education, because right now, even, a lot more people are doing vegan and raw vegan. Again, I don't think it's just about the label, but I find it fascinating that you have all of these things I see on Instagram where people are taking mushrooms and different things and creating a bone, creating a chicken bone to remind them of meat. And I'm like, wow, that's deep. If it's vegetables, why does it have to have a bone in it? You know, that's telling us something about our mentality, right? Our attachment to the food. So if we feel so desperately that we have to make everything fried to a crisp, everything has to have a bone in it, it's no wonder that we're chunky, sometimes unhealthy vegetarians, because most of the body is water. In nature, you don't find fried foods, you don't find heavily salted foods. Creatures don't put salt on their food, other species, right? So there's a mentality going with all this appetite of soothing. It's chemical. It's chemical. We're being encouraged to get high all day.
So,
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 mhm.
so what are some things that we need to do instead, or when we are feeling stressed, what are the correct things to eat?
Well, the beneficial things are going to be you cannot go wrong with fresh fruit. And I know fresh fruit is being demonized as sugar. It's not the same as processed white sugar. It has a shell in it, it's hydrating, it has nutrients in it. We're making it so complicated. I would say fresh fruit, the original juicer really is your mouth. I have all kinds of juicers, but I just ate a whole bunch of papaya today. It's hydrating, it's cleansing, you have fiber. You know, when I was transitioning and coming off a lot of potato chips, I allow myself to eat a lot of whole fresh fruit, and it just cleansed my system, right? We're making things overly complicated. Eat fresh fruit and do other activities that are not just centered around food. There are other ways to nourish ourselves other than food. So, first of all, whole, fresh, living, unprocessed food, I think there's a huge difference to processed, devitalized food. And it takes you to another level. Why? Because it's so full of fiber, it's so full of water, it's so full of nutrients that you're going to start to feel satiation cues. And what that will do over time is make you feel like you can start to notice, like, wow, I had enough food. So if I'm still eating, what am I hungry for? Am I hungry for movement? Right? You can kind of take food off the table at some point, right? Because you can know I've had enough nutrient dense food, enough water and fiber. So now you can start to get some distance and space and see, I need some other things to do. And I would say it's movement. It's movement. Sometimes it's laying on the floor in fetal position, right? Because people think these things seem overly simple. But when you're really stressed, sometimes you want to do nothing. Lay on the floor in fetal position for a reset of your nervous system, right? The other thing, so you have peaceful consumption, you have a daily personal movement practice in garden, and then nature therapy / nature therapy. So interacting with plants, whether that's house plants, starting a windowsill garden. And actually, I would say it's totally connected to, for somebody that wants to release excess weight. People say weight loss, but I would say weight release, because we keep trying to do things that are only at a superficial level. But when you start to nurture plants, especially something that you're going to eat, other things start to make sense, right? You trying to lose weight, it's going to be different. For example, when you start to notice a lot of plants that die, you start to notice the patterns. Am I giving it too much water? Am I not giving it enough water? You start to connect. Your nervous system starts to connect to nature, and it has an automatic triggering effect, but it triggers you into calm, into relaxation. It's kind of built into the activity when you're interacting with nature. When I'm out inside the garden or when I'm moving, the last thing on my mind is food. I'm not hungry. So a lot of the hunger is coming from a disconnection from nature and from a disconnection to healthy relating with folks. So when we're coming together around certain activities, for example, if I'm coming together with people, I usually want to come together around gardening, putting our hands in the dirt, or African dance, or capoeira, or some type of movement, right? Which is, it's a whole kind of feeling of community, but we'll come together purposefully around an activity or the garden or movement. You get triggered in another kind of way and another type of nourishment that has nothing to do with the physical food. So our nervous systems are out of whack. So eating fresh food, anything that has a peel on it, that has water on it, that I can recognize, that my cells can recognize as food. So if I'm putting something in my body that my cells can't recognize as food, then I don't qualify it as a food anymore. It is a recreational substance that is masquerading as food. Movement is something you can do, sometimes dancing around your house, right? These are practices. They may seem like overly simple, right? But you're having chemical responses in your body. Taking naps to reset your nervous system, right? If you have one of those big, everybody has these big flat screen TVs, then videos on, you can find them on YouTube that are like really see or in nature, or sometimes you hear the crackling of fire with somebody, and you see like a big wide lake. Just those kinds of visuals and sounds trigger your nervous system, I would say like in reverse, but they trigger you into calm. We want to calm down the nervous system because it's being overly stimulated, right? We want to get calm, eat real food so your body can start dumping out waste. That can also help to regulate your nervous system because then your body, your cells have something to work with. The things that we're putting into the body that are very flavorful, right, are extremely inflammatory. So anything that doesn't belong in your body sends out an emergency, alarm that we need to, get everybody on cue because there's things in the body that don't belong here. So we're in a state of crisis from a lack of real food, from a lack of nutrition, from a lack of sunshine, not being out in the garden. So we're like frazzled out. So a lot of what we can do is really to connect to nature, even if you feel like you have limited finances, right? Sometimes laying on the floor, you see the cats and the dogs do it. They find a warm spot where sunlight is coming in the window and they lay down. When my son used to be agitated sometimes I would just make him lay on the floor and do nothing. And he would be like going off. Eventually, if you lay like in rest pose or shavasana, they call in yoga, your body will start to calm down. So it's really beneficial to regulate your nervous system, right? Those lifestyle practices, believe it or not, are what we can eat. Real food. One of the top foods we can eat is greens. Greens, greens, greens. Greens to me are meat. I consider greens, that's the whole food group, and bitters are a food group. Many people don't want to eat the bitters, but the bitters are one of the main things. They help put your taste buds in check. If you're addicted to sugar, if you're addicted to cigarettes or alcohol, bitters, parsley, broccoli rabe, aloe vera, all of these different things. Hopefully people are starting some kind of a yard garden or something in their windowsill so you can have access to a lot of these things on your own. But there's a lot that we can actually be growing, believe it or not, in your house. Because I started out in an apartment growing sprouts and little microgreens. So I was determined that nobody was going to be able to tell me that I can't grow my own food, right? So if we're looking for excuses to do something or to not do something, we can find it. I would definitely recommend getting into community, nothing culty, but community around specific activities, the garden, some kind of physical movement, right? And folks that want to buy fruits and vegetables together in bulk. It seems so simple, but these are leverage activities because they give you back more and they start to shift how you are thinking and approaching what is going on with you. It's lifestyle practices. It's like that. So first, eat real food. If it's not real, I wouldn't eat it. I would not feed it to my children. I'm not feeding it to anybody. I made a decision many years ago, certain things I will not feed to my community. I'm not doing it. I know how to prepare it, not feeding it. So even with children, fresh fruits. I can do a million things with a banana. I can do 100 things with a coconut. I can do 100 things with the watermelon. Those are the principles that I have picked up from my grandma. Eat your own food. Those women who could not shop in everybody's community, they had to make do with what they had, what you had in your yard, what you had in your yard. They take those ingredients and they flip it every which way to Sunday. And actually inside a chef's hat, the different pleats on a chef's hat, they actually represent all the different things you can do with the egg. Okay, so the same principle applies. How many things can I do with the coconut? How many things can I do with my greens and my vegetables? I can make crackers. I can make bread. I can make chips. I can do different types of greens. I can make wraps. They're principles. They're principles that are leveraged. So stress is movement, and also sometimes naps and non-movement. I would definitely recommend curating what you're watching and listening to on social media. Your food is instructions. Your music is instructions to yourself. Anything that's going through any hole or orifice in your body is information that's going to be processed by your central nervous system, excuse me, your central processing unit, your brain. It's a set of instructions. It's a set of
Um,
instructions. Mm-hmm.
so I have a question. What, so when you are experiencing emotional eating, what are the remedies and what are the things that you can do to navigate that system? And navigate when you having that feeling, the emotional eating, like what are some things that you can do?
Well, I would say bitter. Again, green juices, not green juices with a bunch of sugar. Many folks are likely experiencing a lot of cravings already because the blood sugar is already out of whack. So that would not be the time to be drinking like the Samantha's juices or getting a Jamba juice that's full of sugar. I would recommend um, just cucumber. I do cucumber lemonade or things that don't have a lot of sugar because it takes a while to re-regulate your blood sugar and to reacclimate your body so you're not so sugar dependent, right? So I would say drinking teas or say, for example, there are cinnamon apple teas, or you can take cinnamon apple, you can grate it, and you can put that inside water, hot water, and drink that. So you have the essence of sweetness, but you're not adding honey or maple syrup. I would not have sweet drinks, right? Because sometimes we're trying to change something. It's like trying to come off a crack, but instead of doing 20 ounces of crack, I do 1 ounce of crack. But the crack is still in my system, right? So if I wanted something sweet, I can take maybe half an apple and grate it with cinnamon and put that inside water and drink it, right? And drink more warm water and more spices. So I'm still tantalizing. I'm still having a sensory experience, but I want to come off of um, jacking up my blood sugar because a lot of the population now, you know what, up to type 6 diabetes, type 3 is prevalent, right? Type 1 you're born with, type 2 is lifestyle, type 3 is an extension, a progression of type 2, and that's dementia. So a lot of the population will on track for dementia. So that means we've got to, or it's up to us to pull back on the concentrated sugars, right? The fruit juices, I would not be drinking fruit juice. I wouldn't even really feed it to my children, to be quite honest. Nobody wants to hear that. But all the Halloween, Valentine stuff would turn our children to little drug addicts. So I would have more teas, more liquids, and I would trade off the sugar for warm drinks, right? Hot lemon water, or take the fruit if you need to, the whole apples, not even the sugary fruit like the pineapples and the mangoes, the apples and the pears. And I would put that inside warm water with cinnamon and ginger and to drink that. You want the like nuances of sweetness, but with taking in too much sugar, and it's just going to keep you on that hamster wheel of cravings, right? You want to pull yourself back from it. And if you're eating more plant-based, there's a lot you can do with mung bean sprouts. That's very affordable. Lentil sprouts. If you are somebody that's not allergic to peanuts, you can sprout raw peanuts, which taste delicious. They're much easier to digest, right? But once you have those core things of nutrition in, or eating soup, let's say like lentil soup. If I don't eat the lentil soup, let's say if everybody in your house is not eating raw, lentils are inexpensive. I stock up on lentils. I can serve it to somebody if I wanted to steamed if they're visiting, or I can sprout it and have it raw. That's lots of protein, and it's not super sugary sweet, but we're eating too much sugar, right? So I wouldn't even be juicing. I would eat the apples and the pears, and once you have a couple of servings of that, done. Move on to the greens. Focus on the greens and the vegetables and the lentils. They'll fill you up a lot more. But greens is your number one. If you're having issues with stress, if you can't juice it, because again, a lot of people are managing the finances, take your blender and blend it and put ice cubes in it, right? So you can stretch your money out. Organic kale and cucumber, that stuff is expensive. I remember back in the day paying $10 for 3 organic cucumbers at the food co-op. So I'm very sensitive as a mother to people on a budget. You know what I'm saying? You can blend that sucker, put a whole tray and a half of ice cubes and some lemon, stretch it out. Then you'll have more water and fiber. You'll get more satiation. Satiation is the best diet, because then even if I offered you a delicious slice of raw vegan carrot cake, you wouldn't be able to eat it. But it's too much sugar. So I would say different teas, Feeding teas also to your children. They have different nutritional requirements, but I would not be drinking a whole bunch of sweet drinks, not even the honey, not even the maple syrup. It's too much sugar, and that's going to contribute to your mood being out of whack, right? I would actually try to have things that don't have sweetener in it, but have more spice, like cardamom, ginger, chai. Chai is fantastic, right? Making your own nut milks. It's a lot cheaper, to be quite honest, than all of the things that you're purchasing from the store. Making your own food is cheaper, is less expensive. And I would say if if you have people that are safe, I would train your children, your family members, delegate certain tasks to them to take some of that off of you so everybody can be involved. For example, getting the children to help grate carrots, right? Getting the children to cut up apples and squeeze some lime juice on it and put that inside containers, right? That can take some of the stress off of mom, right? Maybe everybody has 2 vegetables or something. Maybe it's their job to wash, but no sugar.
Okay. Um, okay. So when next week comes and people are around family and the stress may be ramped up like 1,000, what are some things that you recommend that they do in advance, knowing that they might be walking into volatile family situations?
Well, first of all, I would have my list of things that I'm bringing. I do not go to anyone's house empty-handed. That way, I know I will always have something to eat for me. I always come bearing gifts. I don't come busting through the door talking about I'm vegan, vegetarian. That's a setup. That is a setup. If anything, I would bring a beautiful fruit tart, if I made it, or a fruit plate. Everybody that has a sweet tooth, or watermelon with mint or something in it. But always bring something so that you will have something to eat and come bearing gifts, usually fruit. I would plan ahead what I'm going to eat. I would plan like a menu ahead of time. I don't care if that's even soup, something with soup in it. If you wait until you're in those environments, that's a setup. You're going to wind up eating something because you're really, really hungry that's likely not in alignment with the goals that you have for yourself, right? So people usually wind up putting on excess weight during the holidays. But I don't even like to draw attention to being vegan or being a personal trainer. I don't usually want to talk about any of that stuff. I'm coming to enjoy the people and the time with them, right? Not to focus on food or being divisive or even to participate in the glutton fest. If I was going to eat a lot, again, the pineapple is not going to jack up my skin. A fruit platter is not going to jack up my skin. Anything that I make at home, put it in a nice little glass dish with a cover. I always come bearing gifts. And I think it's very helpful to make sure that you eat before you leave your house. Maybe bake some sweet potatoes and put some cinnamon and some raisins on it. That's super duper easy. That's inexpensive. There are different pastas that you can make, vegetable pastas from real stuff. Take some nutritional yeast and some seasonings, make something cheesy, garnish it nice. It doesn't have to be hard or complicated where you're making recipes with 20 million ingredients, right? We're making things, I think, sometimes too complicated, So I would eat, me personally, also before I go places, I like to exercise in the morning because it takes off so much stress. My movement practice, again, is therapy. So I've taken care of myself first before I go out and I spend time with people. So I don't feel resentful because I've taken some quality time with myself. Another option for what you can do if you don't want to bring food, if you're planting seedlings in your garden,
Okay, and experiencing some technical issues. Oh, okay, you're back. Okay.
yeah, so I was saying
Seedling.
seedlings is another option to give people like a baby herb or a baby plant. If you don't want to come and bring alcohol to contribute to everybody getting drunk and fighting later, you can bring some little baby plants to people. I think people love to get plants and herbs as gifts. So that's another option, an inexpensive option. Or perhaps you can bring like a little project if you have other children that are going to be at an event. You can all plant something together, right? So everything doesn't have to be centered around just gorging on food. I think we have more opportunity to do other activities, right, together that's not just focused on, getting food drunk with each other.
Food drunk, I like that. Um, okay, could you reintroduce yourselves for the people who are watching and what services you offer and how people can connect with you?
hmm So I'm Kwasa, also known as Body Culinary. I'm a personal chef, professional chef, personal trainer, and author. I'm the author of two books, Natural Beauty, No Product. So all the money I spend on food, that's what I put on my hair and my skin rather than a bunch of products. And I also wrote a piece called Whole Living Foods in the Hood with menus to fit your budget. And it has, it's a introduction to my mindset of how I came up being a junk food junkie, and it also has different shopping lists of different budgets with pictures of all the different whole, fresh, living, and unprocessed foods that I purchased with the receipts to give people an example of what I'm eating, and a shortcut and some pictures of all the things I've been feeding my family for all these years. So I have a YouTube channel. I'm on TikTok and also on Instagram. In the mornings, I usually coach women. I have a 5 a.m. workout. And yes, it is early, but it is early because when your children get up, it's a wrap. So it's a 5 a.m. Daily movement practice. And also there's a big coaching component to it where folks come and ask all their questions. We have a nice little fruit roll up of cardio gym.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, no, you were breaking up again, I guess. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And what is your website and your social media handles?
So it's body dash culinary, like culinary school, body dash culinary.com. And you can find me at Body Culinary on TikTok, Instagram, and also on YouTube. There's a community class that I have on Fridays that is usually African dance and capoeira. That's by donation, so I don't turn away any women and girls. And during the week at 5 a.m., every day I have a 5 a.m. workout. Usually the warm up, I will rotate the warm up and share some of that on social media. But people, if they want to train with me exclusively for the whole workout, which is usually about an hour of cardio, flexibility, and strength, we hit it and quit it. You can reach out to me on body or info at body-culinary.com. And there will be several, usually there'll be several events that are scheduled. There's a retreat that's going to be coming up here in Central America. If folks want an opportunity to come uh, and chill inside the garden, go on some hikes, do living foods, put your hands inside the soil just to share in the lifestyle. So I curate personal experiences, and usually there's a retreat that I have with my sister here in Central America in June.
Okay, thank you so much. And you do have a website.
Body-culinary.com.
Okay, body-culinary.com. Okay.
Mhm.
So this has been really wonderful, and you've dropped so much information, and I really hope that the viewers will be able to use it next week when they may find themselves in challenging family surroundings. So yes, this was a very important discussion to have at this time of year. So I definitely want to thank you for sharing. For everyone, this has been Transformation Thursday, and our speaker was Kwasa Khepera, also known as Body Culinary, and she's been on this path for a while, and she is a lovely, informative, and compassionate guide for you on your healing and wellness journey. So please continue to reach out to her. I just want to say that for next Thursday, Transformation Thursday, I will have a Zoom open for anyone who just wants to talk, because I want to be consistent. And Thanksgiving may bring up a lot of different feelings for people this time of year. So you can just reach out to me and I'll send the Zoom link and can just come and create our own family, our own community next Thursday. And then we'll resume with regular programming the following Thursday. I want to thank everyone for watching and for our speaker this week, Ms. Kwasa. Thank you so much.
Thank
And as I
you.
always like to say in closing for everyone for Transformation Thursday, if you haven't been told, if you haven't heard this, I want you to remember that you are a spark of the divine. Okay. Kwasa, I'm going to message you in a few.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for
Good.
having me.
Yes, yes, yes. Good night, everyone. Okay.